favorite subjects, and that's children and brain development and how we can nurture that in our young children. I've been working with children for almost 40-something years. I have 2 grown sons and a granddaughter. That just happens to be her picture up there. She's 2.5. And so it's been really exciting for me to watch child development kind of all over again. Because I feel like I'm smarter now than I was when my sons were little. And so I'm excited that I get to share some information with you tonight. I have about 3 hours worth of information, and we have about an hour and a half, I think. So we're just going to start, and we are going to go through this material. Feel free to ask questions. Something comes up you don't understand, or you think, I don't know about that. This is really kind of a conversation, so I'm not here just to kind of pour it into you. I want it to be kind of a dialogue. The first thing that we're going to need to do is to wake up your brain. I'm going to be talking about that tonight as we think about how children's brains develop. We're going to talk about what the brains need. One of the things that they need is to have energy, because your brain does not function well unless it has energy. And your brain gets energy when it's got blood flow going to it, which comes from, what do you think?
Candy.
No. It comes from movement.
Yeah.
You have to be up and moving. So I want you to stand up. Just barely got to see. Okay, what you're going to do is I want you just to take a walk around the room, and I want you just to walk until I tell you to stop, okay? So you can walk slow, you can walk fast, however you feel. Okay, stop. Okay, this time I'm going to ask you to walk, but also I'm going to ask you to jump. So you just keep walking until I tell you to jump, okay? Then you will jump and you'll keep walking, okay? Got it? Okay, walk. Stop. Walk. Jump. Walk. Jump. Stop. Okay, very good. Your brains are working. All right, now, when I tell you to walk, I want you to stop. I want you to do the opposite, okay? So if I say walk, you're going to stop. Okay, all right, got it? Okay, walk. Stop. Walk. Stop. Okay, walk. Okay, now the other thing that you did was jump, right? Okay, we're going to do jump and then twirl, okay? So jump.
Like really jump or
No, opposite.
Opposite.
Jump,
Twirl.
twirl. Jump, twirl. Okay, now we're going to put all 4 of those together, okay? Walk, stop, jump, twirl. But opposites. Okay? Does your brain hurt? Okay. Stop. Jump. Stop. Jump. Twirl. Walk. All right. Okay, let's see. That little exercise not only helps you to get a little activity going and a little blood flow going to your brain, but what your brain had to do, it had to think, right? And what your brain was actually doing was using the very front part of the brain, which is the frontal lobe. It's the part of the brain that has the executive functions or your higher level function, okay? when children do stuff like this, these kinds of activities, they're actually working on self-regulation. Self-regulation is just another term for being able to control your actions, your impulsivity, all of those kinds of things. So you are actually working on that part of your brain. So don't you feel smarter? Okay, so you can talk back to me. It's okay. You can talk to me. All right.
Is it that one already?
You came out there.
No, I didn't.
Uh-oh, did we lose it all?
And now it's doing that.
Well, technology works until we don't want it to.
Okay. All right, well, we're going to move right along. Okay, if we had our pictures up there, what we would have would be some pictures of stressed out parents. Are any of you stressed out? What are you stressed about? Just call it out.
Behavior.
Okay,
Yes.
behavior. Why did I think that would be one? Okay. What else?
Bedtime.
Bedtime, but that's a behavior, right? Okay.
Have to be children.
We're going to talk about children.
Okay, so yes.
What else?
Developmental delays.
Okay, developmental delays. Okay.
Temper tantrums.
Temper tantrums. Okay, so basically, some of you probably can maybe feel kind of like that at times where your world is closing in on you. You don't know how what's going on. How am I going to take this one more time? How am I going to get all this done? Is that right? Am I describing kind of how you feel? Okay. And guys, I didn't leave you out either. When you are tired, dead tired, and you still have to take care of the kids, and you just don't know how you're going to make it, okay? So this is you. But I want you to look at this statement. I want you to read it to yourself. And then if you agree, I want you to stand up. If you disagree, you can stay seated. Okay, I think we all agree that probably one of your greatest contributions in life will be to the kingdom of God may not be something you do, but someone you raise. Okay, you can sit down. There is nothing more important that you can do as a parent than to be investing in your child. And you are doing that because you're here. Even though you get stressed out, it's the hardest job on earth. I take care of my granddaughter sometimes just for a day or a half a day, and I'm exhausted. So I know how time-consuming, how tiring your job is as a parent. But C.S. Lewis has said that children are not a distraction from more important work. Children are the most important work. In Psalm 127:3, it says, children are a gift from the Lord. Parenting is not an obligation. Parenting is a privilege. God could have given your child to anybody, but He chose to give you, each of you, your child or your children. So it really is a privilege. And with that gift, sometimes there come sacrifices. You cannot, there's always this statement out there, people always think that you can have it all. You can do it all. You could do that, but you can't do it all at one time. So there may be things that at this stage in your life as a parent, you have young children, you have to not do some things. So you have to make some choices, you have to make some decisions, you have to make some sacrifices. So your greatest contribution is to invest in the children that you have. Okay, on your table, you have a handout that says the theory of the whole child development. And what that simply is, and why I gave you a copy of it, is that I wanted you to see that as in child development, we talk about all these different areas of development. And all these areas are important. And all of these areas really work together. What happens in one area of development pretty much affects another area of development. And the reason that I want you to look at this and think about this is as we talk about the spiritual development of young children, which is what I'm sure you're concerned about as well, because you bring them to church, you want them to learn about God, you want them to learn about spiritual and biblical truths. The root to that spiritual development, the foundation for that spiritual development begins in infancy. It is all the things that we're going to talk about tonight. The foundation for spiritual development is laid in the first year of life. And that's why it's so important.
Maryann, see if you can advance forward.
Okay, that's not mine.
That's not yours?
We're talking about babies.
We're talking about preschoolers. I think that's the one they're doing over on the other side.
That's not your flash drive, that was, I handed you your flash drive back, didn't I?
No, it should still be with you.
Okay.
And by the way, if we do a really good job over here with your kids are preschoolers, you won't need that conference. When they get to be teenagers, okay? All right. No. Oh, because they change when they get to be teenagers. But you'll notice at the bottom of that page it says that Jesus increased or grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and with people. So this is very much biblical, is that we're concerned with all areas of development because I really believe that God was concerned or gave us this information that we really need to look at all areas of development as we look even at the spiritual development. So, if I had the next slide, we would be talking about the different parts of the brain. I've been studying the brain development in young children for about 20-something years. And we have been, I think, fortunate enough to be able to learn so much about what goes on inside our brains, and especially in the brains of young children. If we had this information years ago, hopefully we might be further along in implementing some of this, but we haven't. But we have learned that God has designed the brain in such a way that there are some things that we can do that help it to learn best. But we have to kind of understand some different parts of the brain, and if we ever get our picture, you'll be able to see that. But while we don't have our picture, I want you to stand up, and we're going to do this. This will help you to kind of get a picture of the brain. Our brain is divided into 4 lobes, so I want to see 4 fingers, okay? 4 lobes, okay? Your brain is up here in your head. Everybody know that? Got that? Okay. Brain's up here, okay? But we've got 4 lobes, okay? On top, put your hands on top. On top, we have the parietal lobes. The parietal lobes are where we take in a lot of sensory information. At the back, we have the occipital lobes, which have a lot to do with, or is the part of the brain that processes visual information. Okay? Right here in front, as I mentioned earlier, this is our frontal lobe. This is the part of the brain where your higher level thinking takes place, like judgment and reasoning, self-control, impulse control, all of that kind of thing. This is the part of the brain that is the last part to fully mature. It is not fully mature until about the age of 25 in girls and about 28 for guys. Okay? So that should point to the fact that there are differences between boys and girls. Okay, are we back? There we go. Okay. So you can see that we have the varietal up here, occipital, okay, frontal, and then on the side is temporal. This is where you take in information through hearing, your auditory information. You will also notice that there's a part of the brain called the cerebellum, which is kind of at the bottom, and it's right here on each side. And that part of the brain has 40% of all your brain cells in that one little spot. That part of the brain has to do with movement. That part of the brain takes in information through movement. So as we have been doing this little exercise, your brain has been taking a lot of that information in through your cerebellum because we're doing some movement with that. Okay? That'll be important later on as we talk about something else. Okay? So, what are these lobes? Parietal. What are these lobes? What are these lobes? And what are these? Frontal. Okay. All right, have a seat. All right, so that's kind of a look at the different parts of the brain. But what you really need to understand is that when a baby is born, the brain has 100 billion neurons at birth. The baby doesn't keep all those. We don't keep all those. If we did, we'd have a giant head. Okay? Every brain, every child's brain is different. If you did not believe in God before learning this, you should after this. Every child's brain cells are arranged in a different pattern. Every baby that's born, of those 100 billion neurons, they're all arranged in a different pattern. Who could do that but God? Okay? All right, so they have 100 billion neurons. Very few of them have formed connections or networks of learning. And so really that's what life is all about, is that all of those brains need to form networks for learning and growth and development. That's just kind of a picture of the inside of the brain. We'll talk about some of those parts a little bit later. But you can see the picture on the right is kind of a drawing of what one brain cell looks like. And one of those brain cells can connect to up to 13,000 other brain cells, depending on how the learning is taking place. In other words, the job of the child's brain is to form all these connections. Okay. I want to show you this video that kind of explains this a little bit better and gives you more of a little visual picture of what's happening. Okay. Well, I wonder if we lost the connection on it.
You might connect to out of the present mode and with the mouse hit going.
Usually it just hits with the mouse.
There you go.
There it goes. Do we have the audio?
Yeah.
That's the $1 million question. Try it. I don't think it's gonna work. It's hooked up independently.
You might have to turn it down.
Let me see if I can increase it. Maybe just a little.
There he is.
We have no volume, no audio.
promise, we normally have our act together.
Well, you can see from this picture of it, you can kind of see how those brain cells, kind of how they start to form connections. And those are all networks of learning as they begin to form those different connections. But the whole point of this particular video is to talk about one of the most important things you need to remember about brain development.
All right, which one did you want to try, this one?
Yes. That one.
Oh, it's Kim Cat.
Well, as he's working on that, I'll go ahead and just tell you what it says, is that one of the things that we have to remember about brain development is that the experiences is what wires the brain. A child's experiences is what wires all those connections in the brain. That simply means that whatever the environment in which the child is growing in development will affect how their brain is wired. So say that with me. Experiences wire the brain. The experiences wire the brain, okay? So while we're kind of working on that, this kind of talks about what that video was going to tell us. So I'm going to go ahead and pass that out to you, and you can take a minute and look at it.
Thank you.
And what this is really saying is that what is epigenetics, okay? It's kind of a big word, but it's an important word, or the concept is an important concept, because we're all born with things that we inherit, which are our genes, okay? But there are markers on all those genes that we have, and whether or not some of those genes developed, or they call it expressed, depends upon the experiences that the person, the child, the brain encounters. And the reason that we're even concerned about this is if you'll turn it over on the back, you will see right at the top of the page, it says really that the expression of these can be affected by positive experiences, such as supportive relationships and opportunities for learning. Okay, so experiences can be good, or experiences can be what? Negative or bad, okay? Those bad experiences or the negative influences, such as environmental toxins or stressful life circumstances. See, the thing about a young child's brain is very vulnerable. At birth, it's immature. As you saw, that we have 100 billion neurons. So that means the brain, there are not very many connections being made. So the brain is still very vulnerable as to how those connections are going to take place or not take place. Also because the frontal lobe is not well developed. Young children are in an environment of which they cannot judge whether an experience is good or bad. They just think this is the way life is. So if there's a very negative environment in which that brain is being wired, then that brain may be wired for more negative things like anxiety, depression, all of those kinds of negative things that we tend to think about. okay? If, on the other hand, that child, that brain, is in a very positive environment, supportive environment, as it says, then the brain is going to be wired for more positive, for trust, security, safety, all of those positive feelings. Now, which do we want for young children? We want the positive, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, is how can we make sure, or do the very best job that we can in helping our children's brains develop in the best way possible, okay? Not that everything is going to be rosy, everything's going to be positive all the time, but how can we basically make sure that they're getting the things that they need during the first 5 years of life? That's the critical period for development, which we'll talk about. Okay. So that's kind of what this is. I hope you'll take time and read it more closely when you get home. All right. Is it working? No?
The video,
Okay.
I'm throwing in the towel, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
All right. We'll move right on. We'll just move right on.
I can send, I see the link, I can send everybody
Okay.
here
That would be great.
the PowerPoint and the link.
Well, and actually, if you wanted to, you can go on YouTube and just Google the Center on the Developing Child at Harvard, and they have a series of 3 videos. I was going to show you 2 tonight, but they have a series of 3 that you can just take a look at, and they're basically short.
In
videos.
remodeling all of this, we've had the ceiling tile wires are not, something's wrong, so my apologies.
That's okay. It's not the first time it's happened to me. We'll go with it. So, genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences influence how or whether or not the genes are expressed. That's what I just said to you. Together, they shape the quality of brain architecture and establish either a sturdy or a fragile foundation for all the learning, health, and behavior that will follow. Okay? During the first 5 years of life is when most of the brain is wired. Basic, now not that there's not going to be changes in some of the wiring as learning takes place, but the basic wiring, the basic foundation of brain development that kind of sets a person on their trajectory for life is in how many years? 2.
Really one.
First year of life is the basic time when trust is to be formed. And I'll talk more about that in just a moment. But look, at birth, the brain's developed about 25%. By age 2, it's 75%. By age 5, it's 90%. Okay? So, what does that say? The first 5 years of life are very, very important. Why, back at the beginning, when we first started tonight, I said, during your parenting years, it may be necessary to make sacrifices, especially during the first 5 years, because of the critical development that's taking place in a child's brain. And you say, well, now, that could be kind of scary. So what do I do? Well, I believe, and over the last couple of years especially, and it came out of the fact that we use this verse. We do training for church weekday teachers across the state of Texas, the nonprofit that I have, and we looked at this verse, and as I really got to looking at this verse, it really dawned on me that this verse is really talking about all the things that we should be doing as parents, which we've known, but it just fits so well into what we know about the brain. So I want us to read this verse together tonight, okay? So read it with me. Stand up. You know what happens when you sit too long? Your brain goes to sleep. because you don't have any blood flowing to it. So that's why I'll have you getting up and standing up and doing all that. Okay, read it with me. Love God with your whole heart. Love Him with all you've got. Write these commandments that I've given you today on your hearts. Get them inside of you, and then get them inside of your children. Talk about them wherever you are, sitting at home or walking in the street. Talk about them from the time you get up in the morning to when you fall into bed at night. And I love that, fall into bed at night. Don't you just fall into bed at night as a parent? Yeah? Okay, you can be seated. The very first thing has to do with love. First of all, you have to love God, because I really think the only way to be a real effective parent is that you've got to have God's help. I don't know how people do it if they can't depend upon God, okay? So, you have got to have a relationship with God. You've got to love God. And what does that mean? God loved us so much, He sent His Son for us. So that to me says that love involves sacrifice. Okay? So we have to love God. You have to know this you have to have that relationship. You have to have God. You have to have this in your heart so that you can then help your child learn about God and love God. And then talk about them sitting, walking, talking all the time, at morning and night, is really a lifestyle. And the three things that I'm going to share with you in just a moment all really have to do with lifestyle. Lifestyle parenting. Okay? So, well, I'm going to go back before we do that. What I'd like for you to do now is, and I would like for you to, just at your table for a minute, we kind of talked through all that brain development kind of quickly, but I'd like for you just at your table maybe to just talk for a second or two about what did you hear about the brain that may have surprised you or that you have a question about.
Hey, Morgans, come
So-
join our table.
Come talk to these people. Okay, so I'll give you just a
Hey, Pastor,
couple of that.
come join our table.
I'm having a conversation with all of my personalities. I'm gonna join that.
Or join Pastor's table.
I'm gonna join that table over there.
We don't pass that. No pressure. Y'all saw that.
Did you see my 3-year-old grandson, his brain development tonight?
It made me feel better to hear you.
Age 5, I thought it was age 3, that was the most critical.
I've been doing tech stuff, I don't know what I heard your relationship.
We haven't
What do you want
told
us
us
to do?
yet, it's decided.
Just if there was anything that surprised you.
I was like 5 months until he turns 5.
Surprised you. 3 years.
We're the 75%.
Yeah, that, and what I'm going is, can we undo some of the settings?
Yeah, that's what we do.
Pretty scary to you.
Well past
They can do stuff.
I feel like you did better this
They
go around
remember
the
stuff.
first time.
Yes, I know, I'm wondering if the answers would be math specializers.
Okay, so you pretty much cool with all that? Okay. Really what I want to do now is that I want to really kind of just share 3 things with you that I think will help you with that kind of lifestyle. Choices maybe of what would be the things that you could do to provide that nurturing development for your young children. So let's start with, the first one's going to be prioritize the relationship. There is nothing more important than your relationship with your children. That's why this whole talk is entitled simple but hard. I know you're sitting there thinking, well, that's just so simple, okay? These things are simple, but they're hard. Because when you think about prioritizing the relationship with your children, it involves some sacrifice. T. Barry Brazelton, who's a well-known child development expert, one of the first to really make us aware of the importance of the early years, and especially in infancy, has said that nothing good that happens to children happens outside of warm, reciprocal relationships. Because when a child learns that their needs will be met, they develop a connection and a detachment to their caregivers that is crucial to future emotional development. I don't know if you're aware or not, but we have kind of a crisis in our country for mental health. Right?
Very much so.
We have, and this is one of my biggest concerns, is that we have the suicide rate of 10 to 14-year-olds that has tripled. That just came out a couple of weeks ago. It's tripled since 2007. That's 10 to 14-year-olds. I'm here to tell you that didn't start when they were 10. That started when they were infants and young children. And there's all the study now being done on the mental health of infants.